Hello, I'm so glad you're watching today. This interview that I did for Widow 180, the podcast, was episode 45. And I did this interview with Melissa Pierce. Melissa is a truly incredible person. Melissa lost her husband, Dave, suddenly and unexpectedly in 2011. And she and her two boys were left to navigate through their grief together. Melissa talks to us today about her struggles as a solo parent and having to make some really tough decisions and learning to rely on herself again to make those big decisions. In 2017, Melissa wrote a book called Filled with Gold, and the book is about her adoption journey with her boys and then her subsequent widow journey. She felt really unfulfilled in her corporate job, so she decided in 2019 she was going to start a new business venture. And her new business venture is also called Filled with Gold. It's a subscription box service, so it's a monthly subscription box. And this is what I love about this. She fills the boxes with 5 to 7 items, bonus fun items, but she uses products from widow-owned businesses. She handpicks all of the items for the boxes, and she puts things like soaps and bath salts and products that are made from other widows. She talks to us about the importance of self-care when grieving. If you're new here and new to this channel, I'm Jen. I'm helping empower widows with stories, tips, advice, and support. Please hit subscribe and that little bell so you don't miss out on any future interviews coming your way. I hope you enjoy this interview with Melissa Pierce. Welcome, everyone. This is a very exciting week for me and for you too. I get to chat with Melissa Pierce, who happens to be an author. Her book is called Filled with Gold. She's an action taker, which I love, and she's a self-care expert. She's founder of a new business called Filled with Gold. It's a subscription box business, which is obviously women-owned and widow-owned, which I am super passionate about, and she is super passionate about helping other widows. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here and chat with you.
Yes. I want to get started first with finding out what is the maybe just tell us a little bit about the Filled with Gold theme of all of the things that you create. Where did that come from with that name, and what does that mean?
Yeah, so Filled with Gold, the visual that I kept seeing was it's a form of like Japanese art, and where the Japanese artisans take broken pottery and they fuse it back together, with gold lacquer, gold or silver lacquer. And it makes the piece, rather than trashing the piece or throwing it away, it makes it more beautiful by fusing it together with gold. And it just really resonated with me because I felt like my heart was broken after Dave died and kind of shattered in a million pieces, and just fusing it back together with hope and with gold. And so that image just really means a lot to me. So
Yes.
so my brand or whatever is the heart with gold fused, back together.
I had heard of that before. What is the name of that again?
It's called Kintsugi, Kintsugi. There's a lot of pottery.
Yes.
Yes. It's just, I don't know, it just means a lot to me. I love it.
It does. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful image, and has a lot of meaning for us as widows.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So can we let's go ahead and get started about with what happened with Dave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So back in 2011, it was January 2011, 10 years ago, we were living with our sons. Our two sons were 10 and 13 at the time. We were living in Eastern Oregon. So I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, but we were living on the eastern side of the state where Dave was teaching K through 12 music and math. And it was just like your typical winter, weekend. And Friday night, he just kind of complained that he wasn't feeling great. Like maybe he was coming down with a chest cold or something like that. Um, so I sent him off to bed, here's some Mucinex, take
Yeah.
this. And he kissed me on the cheek. He's like, I don't want to, get you sick. Um, so he went to bed. It was like nothing, just like maybe a cold. And then I woke up the next morning and he was dead. He had died, and it was it. I mean, I can't even like. I remember some bits of it very clearly, and then there are parts of it I do not remember because it's such a shock to find your husband dead in bed. And I did CPR. And
And you were sleeping next to him.
well, I wasn't though that night, and normally every other night of our entire life I
Yeah.
had slept with him. But my youngest son and I curled up on our sofa bed and were watching movies the previous night and just fell asleep. And so I woke up and I thought, oh, I let the dog out and put wood in the fire, and because we had a wood stove. And I thought, gosh, it's Dave's an early riser. I'm like, he should be up by now. And so I walked in, and that was when I found him, and I immediately did CPR. But he was like, I knew he had been dead for
Yeah.
several hours, and
Yeah.
called the paramedics, and it took them an hour to get there because there was like a snow and ice storm that night. And it was hell. It was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare.
And he didn't have any kind of health issues or anything.
No, like prior to that, maybe 3 or 4 weeks prior to that, he had a physical, and it's like, oh yeah, you're great,
Ah,
perfect cholesterol, all the things.
what?
And yeah, so it was just so traumatically out of the blue. I mean, he was 46.
Oh my God.
Yeah, 46 years old. Like, and active. He coached football, baseball, basketball. Um, yeah, it was
Now,
just
did you,
so unexpected.
so you were in there trying to help, but
Hmm.
your boys were hanging out outside of the room? You wouldn't let them in, or?
My youngest was with me. Our oldest was on a field trip with
Oh,
a school field trip in Portland, so he was 250 miles away.
ugh.
So my youngest kept yelling, like, because I was screaming, I was, yeah, hysterical. And my youngest is yelling, like, Mom, Mom, what is it? And I'm like, please don't come in here. Don't come in here. And then I got a hold of the paramedics, and they kind of ran me through how to do CPR, and I know how to do CPR. And so I'm like, I've done it. I'm doing it. And um, they were able to contact my brother-in-law, and so he made his way up the snowy hill, and he got there, and then the paramedics. But I had to tell my youngest like what had happened. um, and looking back on, I mean, we had talked about it later, and he told me what he was 10, so at the time he thought that there was like a wild animal or something in our bedroom, because we lived in the woods, and there was lots of wild animals. And then I had to contact my oldest son, who was 13, over the phone, because we were supposed to be at a basketball game. Dave was going to coach that morning, so I had to call the other coaches and tell them what happened. And then I thought, oh my God, like like Brad might hear about,
Oh,
my
yeah.
oldest might hear about this. And so I contacted the teacher that he was with on the field trip, and my brother and his family were on their way to get him and pick him up. So I had told him, my brother picked him up, and
Did you tell him
drove.
on the phone?
I had to, yeah.
Because
It
he
was
would have found
That's
out
hell.
anyway. He would have found out from
Right.
a text
Yeah.
message or somebody
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
Not ideal. I mean, it was like, it was horrible. I mean, I remember talking to the teacher that he was with, our friend, like, I wanted to know, like, what was it like? What was he like? I wanted to, like,
Yeah.
try and experience what he was going through as I told him on the phone. And it was just heartbreaking when when the teacher, told me how he reacted, it would just gutted me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, in that situation though, you had to do what you had to do. There was no
Right.
other way.
Yeah. And I'm making all these decisions, like I don't even remember who I called first or how this person showed up at my house.
Yeah.
When a sudden death happens of your partner, you're just like, I'm just whatever. I'll make whatever decisions out of this chaos. And
Yeah.
uh, yeah. Mm.
So did you did you ever find out what happened with Dave? How did he die?
The medical examiner determined that it was like on the death certificate, it says the first, like A, undisclosed or undetermined. And then B was sleep apnea, and C was, so there's like three causes. C was respiratory illness. So
Huh.
there was no autopsy done um, because, well, we were at the funeral home 2 days later, and I was making arrangements with, like, all our family was there, and the funeral director was talking about embalming him, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, isn't there, like, what about an autopsy? And he's like, well, the medical examiner um, didn't need an autopsy. And do you want an autopsy? I'm like, well, I don't know, like, I guess. And he's like, well, we'll have to ship his body to Portland or Boise, which are both like 200 and 300 miles away. And I'm like, well, no, you're not going to ship his body anywhere. And our boys, we had adopted them from the Oregon foster care system 5 years prior. And so I was just kind of talking it out with everybody in the room. And I'm like, well, like, there's no genetic, like, if he has some like weird genetic anomaly, it wouldn't be passed down to my kids through
Yeah.
through a bloodline. So I'm just like, I just made a decision. I kind of wish I hadn't have made that decision. I wish I would know for sure, but I did see some psychics. When you want answers, you should go see a psychic.
Oh, girl, I did that.
Because I wanted answers, and I visited two psychics that indicated that he had some kind of a like an embolism or a blood clot or something like
Oh,
that.
okay.
So I mean,
That's
I'll never know for sure, and that's okay. I made my peace with it.
that's helpful though. I mean, if
Yeah.
you've got a little bit of a direction from the psychic that kind of verifies what the medical examiner said.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I would go with that. Take
Sure.
that as a comfort.
Yeah, and I do. I tend not to. I mean, there's nothing. I don't know, with widowhood, if there's something I can't control, or I can't give it any more energy, because I will never know, and I'm not going to drive myself crazy about it. So he just, in my mind, he died in his sleep, and it happened, and there's nothing I could have done about it.
Do you feel like with I did the thing with the psychic where I think I went to see a psychic pretty soon after, and then it was like it was like another question would come up in my head like 6 months later, and I'm like, "Ooh, maybe I should go back and ask her again this question." It's
Mm.
like this
Yeah.
ongoing thing. You're just searching for answers, and it's never ending for me
Yeah.
anyway. I don't know.
Well, I saw a psychic about a year after Dave died. And then I got, whatever. I was just kind of willing, like, hey, whatever comes up, comes up. And it ended up that my dad, who had died in 2003, he came in, my grandma, and I'm like, I love you guys, but, I really want to talk to Dave. Thanks for showing up. I love you, but just
I
really
love
want
it.
to talk.
Where's Dave?
Yeah, where is he? And so, but I didn't want to tell the psychic like why I was there,
Yeah.
because I was still kind of skeptical. And then he ended up kind of coming in third, like coming into the tail end,
He was
and
busy.
yeah, he had to let my dad, my grandma have their say. And then I saw a separate psychic about a year after that, so around year two. Just because like you said, like, oh, well, this kind of came up. Hey, I'd
Yeah.
like a few more answers if I could. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Or just something to give you a little bit more peace, even if it's
Hmm.
just temporary.
Yeah.
That's how I looked at it. I'm like,
Yeah.
I just need a little bit of peace right now. Like, let's just
Yeah.
try and get an answer from somewhere.
Yeah. And that's where, I mean, honestly, I, I totally believe in that. I think
Yeah,
it's a good way to go if that feels right for you.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know how everybody tells you that you're not supposed to make any big major changes or major moves or anything in that first year. Did you do anything major?
Oh, I just did all the major things.
Yeah, what'd you do?
Really did. So I mentioned that we lived in the country,
Hmm.
and so I'm from Portland, which is the city, and we lived on 6 acres on a mount on the side of a mountain. And when in the winter when it snowed, like you had to plow and you had to like do all this stuff, which Dave did a lot of. And our house was actually on the market at the time that he died, but it was not
Oh,
moving. So I decided to move myself and the boys and our two kids down into town a little bit more, so I could, actually get around, get them to school, because I'm the one getting them to school. I'm working full time. I'm doing all the things, and a couple of our friends were like, yes, we can't take care of you up here. Like, we
yeah.
need to, like, it's best if you move down. So to like
I lost your, lost the sound.
I think it'll start
Oh,
back
here
up.
we go. There it
It'll
is.
start back up. It's my internet. I'm really sorry about that.
That's okay. I can edit
Okay.
that out.
Okay.
So,
So where
so
where was I?
you were saying that you ended up moving.
Yes. So made the decision to move into town about 10 miles away, which is where the boys went to school. So the whole town basically 2 days after, 3 days after Dave's service, memorial service, moved all of our stuff into town, set the house up. It was like in 3 hours, basically. They
What?
just well, Dave was part of the town. Like, we were part of the town. He was an educator there. He was a coach, just a really beloved, figure in that community. And everybody was grieving. And so I think the way that people were showing us how they cared about us was to do things,
Yeah.
was to move us, take care of us, to help take my kids to basketball games and all the things that I couldn't do while I was working. And just a lovely community, Union, Oregon. I love those people.
So
Um,
you did go back to work then right away.
yeah, I've heard on your a couple of recent podcasts, you talked about the bereavement leave.
Yeah.
It is terrible in
It's
this
awful.
country.
What?
Yes,
Who? That's what I keep
terrible.
saying. Who makes
Yeah,
this rule? I don't understand.
yeah. Or I don't understand why it's not part of the FMLA. The
I know.
It's horrible. So I received like 5 days off, and
Ugh,
then I ended up getting a short-term disability. My doctor signed a form saying I was stress leave, basically.
yeah,
So 5 weeks stress leave, short-term disability. So I could
good.
get
Something.
some income coming in, because at that point too, Dave carried our medical insurance, and that was done like 30 days after he died. It's like, sorry, get your own insurance, which was, thank
30
God I was
days
working.
after?
Yeah.
What?
So but I was working the whole time, so I just switched us over to my policy. But what if I wasn't,
Thank God
what
you
if I
had
wasn't
something
working?
to fall back on.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, we could go on and on about that.
We
There's some
could. I
changes
wish I
need to
would have
be
known
made.
about the disability thing. No
Mhm.
one ever told me about that because I certainly would have qualified for that and I could have used it at the time and I didn't know
Oh
about it.
yeah. Yeah. Well, luckily I had two really good friends in HR at my company, and they're like, okay,
Mm.
this is what you're going to do. You're going to go to your doctor, tell him what happened, tell him you're really stressed out, of course. And she was like, absolutely. I mean, however long you need to be out, I'll sign the form for. So
So
Um,
this move that you made was
mhm.
only, it was pretty close to where you were before. So,
Yeah, it was about 10 miles away, and it was so I could like the boys could walk to school
oh,
at that
nice.
point, and like we were surrounded by a community. It wasn't as isolating as we were, as isolated as it was up on the mountain that we
Yeah.
lived in. And then 6 months after that, the school year ended, and I decided to move us back to Portland, which is where my family, my job actually was in Portland. I was working remote um, for 4 years prior when we lived in Eastern Oregon. So yeah, I made big moves, ones you're
Yeah.
not supposed to do, but I had to,
You
I
had
really had to.
to. Well, yeah, I mean, you had more
Yeah,
support there, and
right,
that's you're more familiar with it. And even though you had the
right,
community in the other place, you had your family and all of the familiar things back in
right.
Portland. So,
Yeah. Hmm.
oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. Stressful.
So you got back to Portland, and then they.
Hmm.
What did you find, like when you were getting back settled in Portland? Did you? How were the boys doing at that point? Like, were they okay with those changes, or what was getting to be like your biggest struggle as a
Yeah.
solo parent?
Yeah, I think they were okay. They were because they grew up in foster care for like they were 5 and 7 when Dave and I adopted them. I think they kind of had developed these coping skills of being kind of used to moving. I mean, it's not good or bad. It's just it is what it is. So
Yeah.
they were pretty kind of roll with the punches um, kids, and then even took about a year. I think we were all just in shock, honestly. We were in shock for about a year, not quite understanding what had happened. And then probably after a year, well, 6 months for me really was kind of when I started cracking up, like after the 6 month point. Um, but really, it took about a year for it really to start showing up, the effects of Dave's death showing up in with my kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was happening? Just like they were just angry or frustrated,
Yeah.
all the
Yeah. I
things.
mean, for me, like that first 6 months was like I'm a doer. Like I was talking with Jenny Lisk from the Widowed Parent podcast, and I guess there's certain types of grievers. And so 10 years later, I'm learning like what type of griever I am, and I am an instrumental griever, somebody who just does. I do the things, I take care of business. I kind of like it's more of like a masculine trait, I guess, but
Hmm.
I was just doing all the things, taking care of business, working, paying the bills, going grocery shopping, and really not acknowledging what had happened
Yeah.
until probably around 6 months. I really started the stress and the loneliness and everything really caught up with me because I really was not, yeah, I just wasn't acknowledging my feelings. I was really shutting down.
Yeah.
And so I worked with a grief counselor kind of around that 6 month mark, and kind of was working through my own grief and understanding it, and then that she was also helping me understand my kids and
Hmm.
how they might be grieving. And it really showed up with my oldest son around like the time he hit puberty,
Mm.
14. That was 14, 15, 16. That was pretty rough.
Which
Like
is a
he,
rough age
yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
But that whole 6 months to a year kind of time
Mhm.
frame, were they did they kind of just shut down on you, or were they kind of open with talking about things? Like, how was that? Or was it just kind of like, let's just get through the day and, nobody really
Mm.
talking about things? Like,
No, we were like my youngest, and we would talk. Like I would talk. Like we would say his name. We had pictures. We had like a
yeah.
shelf in our, like between our kitchen and dining room with all of like Dave's memorabilia and his picture and things like that. And so my youngest and I, like we would talk, just talk about Dave and memories and stuff. And my oldest would just be like, he would leave the room. You know,
Uh,
he just could not. And I totally get it. It's painful. It's
yeah.
really painful. I mean, he had lost two fathers by the time he was 13. His birth father
God.
and then his forever dad, Dave.
Yeah.
So I totally got it. And so I was trying to get him all the help that he needed and all the resources. And I was looking into resources. And then it just got to a point where I had to go, dig further into getting more help for him. And that required him living away from our home for almost 2 years. But yeah, he's doing great. He's actually graduating college next month, and I'm just super proud of him. He's really
That's awesome.
moved through some incredibly tough
Yes.
things. Lots of people, like most people in this world, don't have these types of experiences, and so he's lived through a lot of pain. Both my kids. I'm really
Yeah.
proud of them, and I'm really
Yeah.
proud.
He hit a rough patch for a little while,
Yeah,
but now
yeah,
he's
and
doing good.
yeah, he
Yeah.
did. And for me, as a solo parent, it was like normally Dave and I would make big decisions together, of course.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
partners and we're co-parents and all that. And I was like, oh my God, I'm making these decisions all on my own. And I really had to get to a point where I trusted my gut. I really trusted myself pretty much for the first time in my life. Trusted myself to make the best decisions for me and my kids.
Yeah. That was one of the first thoughts, of course, that had popped into my mind with what happened with Brent. I was just like, how is all of this going to affect Claire? Like,
Mhm.
how is she going to, my mind was just flash forward, like, you know, 15, 20 years. And I'm like, what kind of kid is she going to end up
Yeah,
like without her dad around? So all those
yeah,
decisions and all those thoughts and trying to decide everything on your own, it's so hard.
yeah. And it's heartbreaking to watch your kids suffer. I mean,
Yeah.
to see your kids in pain and you just want to fix it, and it's kind of something you can't fix.
Yeah.
It's something you have to move through.
So
Yeah.
you saw a grief therapist, you said,
Grief counselor, yeah.
a grief
Hmm.
counselor. Okay.
Hmm.
And how long did you see that person?
Oh, I saw her for about a year and a half or so. It kind of she really helped me understand because I had not gone to therapy prior to this. And I was somebody who was just like, yep, feelings. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do feelings today. you know, I have to go grocery shopping. I can't do feelings right now. So, so I did. That was just kind of who I was.
So you stuck with it for a year and a half. That's pretty good.
I did. I did. It was really hard, but I knew that I had to do because I was not doing well. I was soothing myself with alcohol, and I wasn't sleeping, and I wasn't
Yep.
taking care of myself. And it's like, God, if I don't take care of myself, what's going to happen to my kids?
Yeah.
Like I have to, fill my bucket. I have to I have to take care of my needs before I can take care of anyone else's needs. And that was really kind of counterintuitive to the way I ran my life, but I really
Yeah.
had to grab onto that idea. It's like, no, I need to come first.
Did
I
you
have to come first.
did you find that it was just a lot worse at night because you were go 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 during the day,
Mhm.
get everything done, and then you finally lay your head down and it's like bam.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're doing the things, you're getting the kids up, breakfast, school, work, homework, dinner, all that stuff. And then you get them to bed and you're like, okay, well, now what?
Well, no.
Oh, I can't sleep. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sleeping. Yeah, so,
I
yeah.
think it took me about 3.5 years before I actually like slept through the night, maybe. It
Mhm.
was that,
Yeah, yeah, and it's
maybe
like you
even
can't
longer.
continue. You can't, like, physically and mentally and emotionally, you can't continue on that track.
No.
Mhm.
So at what point did you take off your ring?
Oh, good question. So part of the kind of trauma of Dave's sudden death is I lost my appetite, like
Mm.
completely and utterly. Like even like I could only eat wet foods. There's something going on in my body. Like I could not, like if I put a cracker, saltine in my mouth, it would just be like sand. So like I just could not eat anything. So I lost a lot of weight, like very quickly. And I know my brother and my mom, I ate a lot of soup and rice because I could eat those. So they made sure to feed me and stuff. But
Yeah.
so I dropped a lot of weight. I remember like I was getting dressed in the morning and my ring fell off on the carpet, and I just looked at it and I was just kind of pissed, you know. I was really angry actually that he had died. That was kind of my number one go-to emotion, was like anger and sadness kind of side by side. And just looked at it, I'm like, I'm not putting this back on. I don't feel married right now. You know, I just
Oh,
don't feel
okay.
married. So it was a couple months, yeah.
Okay.
Um, so I have it. I still have it, you know, and I have his ring, and they're put away. But yeah, I didn't feel married anymore. You know,
Yeah.
I love Dave, and he's my best friend, and he's my co-parent and partner. But at that moment, it's like I'm really on my own. I
I
really am. Like,
know.
yeah,
It's such a
yeah,
weird reaction that some people have that too. Like they feel like they they're still gonna they're married, they're gonna, wear that ring for years and years forever, and they're never taking it off, and then sometimes it's right away and it's like, nope, I'm not married
yeah,
anymore. And it's
yeah,
weird how people react to it differently. But I
yeah.
guess anger does come into that and play a lot into that.
Yeah, I mean, I was experiencing like 12 different emotions, like every minute. And then for me, so it was like, I don't want to do emotions right now. This is
Yeah.
inconvenient.
Not
Um,
convenient, no.
it's not convenient right now. Yeah. So yeah, I have issues.
I'm just
Had to
going to put
work
that
through
away and
those.
I'll do it later.
Exactly. And you can't really do that because grief will come and find you and be like, I'm going to deal with you now, Melissa. So that's kind of how that happened.
Okay, well, tell us about your thoughts on dating again. When did that kind of come in, and when did you feel ready again?
Yeah, great questions, Jen. Um, it was around like the 18-month, year and a half mark. I was doing a lot of work, you know, like the work of grieving, the work of understanding what had happened, and who I was in all this, like how I had changed or was changing as a person, and how I was actually really putting myself first. And I just was asking myself a lot of questions like, what do I want right now, or what do I need right now? Sometimes it was like, well, I need a nap, or
Yeah.
what do I need right now? I need a warm bath, or I need a massage, or I need someone to hug me, or I want somebody to touch me. um, so I was like, well, you know, I feel like I'm in a place where I just like to socialize, and I like partnership. I'm good at partnership. I like being in partnership. And so I just really had to get super clear about what I wanted in partnership. So one night I sat down with, it was a couple glasses of wine and, and a pad of paper and a pencil. And I just free wrote, like, here's what I want in a partner, potential partner, or in dating or in a relationship. And I just wrote and wrote, wrote, wrote. I had like 3.5 pages of, you know, what kind of a catalog order, basically,
Yes.
of all these things. And then I
I
folded
love that.
the sheets up, put it away in my desk. I'm like, okay, you know, like I'm going to let go. This is just going to happen, or it's not, whatever. I placed my order. You know? So I'm not going to worry about it. And a couple months later, I met this man named Sean through a meetup group. I think they
Mhm.
still have meetup groups. And it was like for people over the age of 45. I was 45 at the time, with kids. And so like singles
Oh,
with kids. So there was all these fun events like kayaking and,
That's cool.
dinners out. It was just really casual and kind of organic and stuff.
Yeah.
So I ended up meeting him. There was a dinner with 12 of us at this one restaurant that I always wanted to go to, but I didn't want to go alone.
Perfect.
Um, so I ended up just kind of casually, I was talking to a gal next to me, and he was across the table from me, and he had mentioned that he grew up in the same town that I grew up in. And so I'm like, oh, yeah, like I grew up there too. Like, what's your name? And he told me his name, and I'm like, what year did you go to, like, what year did you graduate, Tigard? Or school? Tigard is the name of the town.
Hmm.
And I was like, 1984. I'm like, well, I did too. I think we graduated high school together. And, so we're trying to piece all this stuff, and it ends up like we went to the same church.
What?
We, he had gone on a choir trip with my brothers,
Oh
when they were
my God.
kids, like when he
What?
was 9 and my brothers were like, 10 and 11. So he knew my brothers, and we knew a lot of mutual people. And so it was just so freaky. And yeah, so we got to know each other. We went on like an official date like a month later, and he's the first guy I dated, and we ended up getting married 5 years ago.
Oh my
So
God. So
yeah.
that kind of exchange where it's like it's somebody that you knew or kind of sort of knew through other
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
but that automatically gives you that trust that you need,
Right.
It's
Yeah. He
not
was
like
kind
he's
of
a total
pre-vetted.
stranger,
Yeah.
you know?
And so we would go, like I would come back from a date, and I'd pull my list out, and I would start checking off oh gosh, he hit this mark. Ooh, this is getting good. Oh
What?
yeah, yeah. It's like, and some of the things were like not deal breakers. Like he is not the best speller in the world. He's a smart guy, incredibly intelligent, not the best speller. And that was kind of one of my things. It's like has to be a good speller, because that just makes me crazy. It's one of my pet peeves. So I'm like, but that's not a deal breaker. I can overlook that.
This
But
is so funny that you're saying
yeah,
that because my husband now, Doug, we joke about that. I'm like, if you get Their and THEY, I'm
yeah,
like, I wouldn't have married you. Yeah,
yeah. I
we
don't know.
joke
He's a
about that
software
too.
engineer.
So funny.
Super. Isn't it funny? It's like, oh my gosh, that makes me crazy. But the things we have to live with. But
Okay, but
yeah.
when you first started seeing Sean, did you tell the boys that you were dating, or did you kind
Mm,
of just say, "Hey, I'm going out with the girls," or whatever you said, or what did you tell
yeah.
them?
Well, when I was thinking about it, I said, hey kids, this is what I'm thinking of, like maybe going on some dates, and they're just like, okay, whatever. Like, can we go play our video game? We're like, we don't want to talk about this. So, like, mom, you do you. So, they were just, yeah, they like him. My youngest really wants, kind of really accepted his, like, Sean's father energy. Like, he considers Sean his parent,
Oh,
because he
nice.
was 13 or 14 when I met Sean. So he had some solo years,
Yeah.
with me as a solo parent, and he really loves Sean's energy. And Brad at that time, he respects Sean. They respect each other, but he's like, no, I don't need a dad. I have a dad,
Mm,
and but they respect. I mean, everybody gets along. It's kind of crazy. Like
yeah.
my mom gets along with his mom, and they go on walks together. It's like our families just conjoined.
Uh,
It's really cool.
that is awesome.
Yeah, which is
That is
something I
awesome.
had on my list. That was on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You made it happen because you put it down, pen on paper.
yeah.
You made it
Well, what
happen.
was good about that is like I think because I wrote all that stuff, I could recognize Sean when he crossed my path,
Mm,
and then I also knew, like, if there was somebody that crossed my path that didn't have these traits, I could be like, okay, you might be a nice person, but you're not for me. Because
yeah.
I was super clear about, this is what I want. This is what I want for me. This is what I want for my kids. And some of these things are deal
And
breakers.
deal
And
breakers. Yeah.
yeah, mhm,
Yeah. That's so true.
yeah.
Well, what a happy ending. What a happy
Yeah,
story. Everything's been
yeah.
good.
Mhm.
And then you said you did get married when? 5 years ago?
Yeah, 2015 we got
Okay.
married. Mhm.
Well, so 2015 you got married, but
Mhm.
this book that you wrote was in 2017.
Right.
Tell us about your book, Filled with Gold. And okay, I have so many questions,
Yeah.
but yes, go ahead.
No. Well, so it took about a year to put everything together. So I think all of 2016, most of 2017. Well, yeah, about a year or so to really get all my thoughts down. Because here's how this happened. Like I would tell people just like a little snippet of kind of how my life, my adult life worked and or how it went, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you need to write a book."
Yeah.
Like, so the first page of the book starts out with the first day that I met my kids when they were 5 and 7.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, so that's the very first. So it starts from there. Like boom, all of a sudden I'm a mom on a Sunday morning.
Oh,
That's
wow.
like I wasn't a mom the night before, but then all of a sudden I'm a mom to two little boys, and just in the trajectory that put us on. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's really I wanted to write this for my kids because I wanted them to know like who I was and how I felt about being their mom and all the emotions and everything, and then also solo parenting them and how I felt about their dad, and because as adults I think they're ready to read something like that. They both have my book. I don't think they read it, but
Ah,
um, yeah, and just also just to get it down on paper, it was so cathartic
oh,
to
yeah.
just think about the stories. There was so much that I forgot or so much that I trapped and didn't allow to come up. And so through the process of writing the book, I was able to really bring some things out, some emotions, some experiences, and really look at them in a hard way and dissect them and process.
Oh my gosh, what a gift.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Now, you had been journaling along the way or not really?
I journaled here and there. God, going back to some of those journals. I don't know. Have you journaled or do
Oh
you
my God,
journal?
yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
when you go and read back some of the stuff, it was pretty painful.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's necessary. But no, I didn't like. I wasn't a regular journaler, but I actually had some help from a friend of mine who helped me put kind of my thoughts together and write it in a semi cohesive way, because I have widow brain, the widow fog, that's very real.
Yeah.
So, between the two of us, we were able to write this beautiful book. Yeah.
Okay, so you got married, you wrote the book, you were
Hmm.
still working
Yeah.
full time for it. Well, tell us about this newest business venture and
Yes.
when did that idea kind of pop into your head?
Yeah, well, I did take 2 years off to just be a mom. So in 2012 to 2015, 2014, I did take 2 years off
Oh,
from my job. It was
okay.
I worked at a Fortune 500 company in their sales and legal department. So at that point, I was like, I can't keep all these plates spinning. I
No.
can't work full time, be a parent. I was starting to see some of the cracks with my oldest son. And I'm like, I need to be a mom. That's my most important job. So I was able to kind of work it out. So I did take 2 years off. And then when things were kind of settling, I went back to that same company. So 2015 to 2019, I worked for them. So it's a
Okay.
great company, but I was like, this is not what I need to be doing. This is not fulfilling
Yeah.
anymore, and I can't continue to convince myself that it is. So with Sean's support, he's like, just quit. We'll figure something out. Just do it. You
Yeah.
deserve this. So I did. so January 2020, and I'm like, I'm going to take a month off and just chill, and then I'll go back and I'll try and figure out another job. And then, we had this pandemic.
Yeah. Threw it off a little bit.
So, yeah, threw off the plans. And then we sold our home in Portland and moved to the Oregon coast.
Ah,
The
nice.
beautiful place to quarantine. And all this whole time I was like, how do I serve? How do I take my experience and some of the wisdom, that I kind of knuckled my way through these past 10 years? How do I take that and make somebody else's life better? Because that's always kind of been this thing in the back of my head. Like, I need to serve. I need to take this experience and serve other people. And so I had one of my friends sent me a subscription box, and it had, I think it was FabFitFun, and it had all these lovely lotions and self-care items. And I'm like, oh, damn, I wish this would have showed up on my doorstep every month. When I was really in the thick of things, this would have been great, because actually self-care is what really changed the game for me, as far as being in a good place to effectively parent my kids,
Yeah.
and just move through life. So I was thinking, and I'm like, I could probably do this. I could figure out how to create a business around this. And so that's what I did back in last September. So like 7 months ago.
Just 6, 7 months ago.
Yeah.
But what's so brilliant about it, like you said, is because we don't put ourselves first, and we're not thinking about ourselves, because we have, like you said, all the plates and all the juggling, all the balls and all the other
Right.
things, and we just get put to the side. So
Yeah.
with your subscription box, it's a reminder, and it is a monthly reminder that comes to your doorstep and says, hey, it's time for you right now.
Yeah. The
What's
way I
so
imagine
beautiful
it,
about it?
I just kind of, in my head, I imagine this box shows up, this beautiful box that I have shows up on the doorstep, and the widow who opens the door, she might be having just the crappiest day ever, and there's just a shift that happens, like, oh, this is for me. Like,
Yes.
I get to open this up, and I get to take some time out for myself, and I get to soothe my body, my soul, like everything. Like, somebody thought of me. Like, I'm putting
Yes.
these gifts together. I am putting everything together, and I'm always thinking, like, gosh, what do they need? What do they need? What would make them feel good? So I have these ideas in the shower. So I actually have shower notes. I write notes in the shower, like, oh my God, because I don't want to forget them. Like, so I'm always thinking, isn't that funny? I'm just always thinking, like, how do I make her
Brilliant.
life feel better? I mean, how do I make her feel better? Like, and just know that she's not alone. That
Yeah.
was really hard for me, like, connecting and trying to find other people who were experiencing what I was experiencing, because it's odd. It's an out of order death, and it's not supposed to happen when you have children, little
No,
kids to
I
take care
just,
of.
when you were just talking about it and just explaining it that way, where somebody opens up the door and they're just having that kind of day, but just to have that feeling of somebody thought of me,
Hmm.
because we don't really get
Right. Or
attention,
I thought of me.
anymore, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So,
I'm finding that there's about half of the folks who are ordering this are people who are gift givers. They're giving this to their widowed loved ones. The other half are widows purchasing it for themselves, which is amazing.
yeah,
Like, it's not indulgent. Self-care is not indulgent. Self-care is the first thing to go, because we're always
yeah,
putting ourselves last. But it's so necessary, because it's how I manage my stress, taking care
yeah.
of myself. It's how I, just felt better,
So
and I was able to trust myself.
what are some of the items and things we can find in the box?
Well, there's always a book,
Ooh,
and
okay.
a book by a widow author,
Love
and
it.
I'm always trying to outsource. I mean, there's so many female authors. I hope you're writing a book. Are you writing a book?
I have been trying to write a book for 8 years now.
Well, when you do, I'm going to feature you in the box because it's so important. I had such a hard time 10 years ago trying to find the resources in the books that I
I
wanted.
know.
That, you know, so
I know.
there's really great books out there. So there's a book. There is always like a healthy snack. Then there's a couple of items that are like body care, and then there's usually a couple bonus items I like to throw in. I don't want to give any spoiler alerts. So
Cool.
the spoiler alert is that there's always a book. And if there's any of your listeners that are authors,
I
I would love
know.
for them to contact me, or creators of
Or
self-care items.
yes, makers, creators.
Hmm.
Do you make candles or any kind of
Anything.
products? That would
Hmm.
be perfect for that.
Yeah,
Definitely, if
please.
anyone's listening, get in touch with Melissa, get in touch with me, and we're gonna, when we wrap this up, we'll put all of the information in the show notes and everything on how to find Melissa and, of course, how you can find me. But absolutely, Melissa is looking for widow owned businesses to contribute to her subscription boxes, and I love this idea. So,
Yes.
everyone, please.
Widows helping widows.
Widows
I
helping
love
widows.
that.
God, it's
Like,
what it's,
I just
yeah,
love the circle of that, the
it
cycle of
is.
that.
It's
Hmm.
such a ripple effect. I mean, you're starting this, and think of all of the people that you're going to be supporting along the way, and then everyone that's supporting them along the way. It's crazy. It's beautiful what you're doing.
Thank you. I love that.
Um, so what did you find? What was my next question? What did you find was the hardest part about launching the new business? Like, what did you struggle with?
Um, so I've always worked for somebody. I've always worked for a company. So that was getting out of that mindset of, or getting into the mindset of, I am the boss. I am the boss lady.
Yeah,
Like,
you
and
are.
really owning that. And, I got some really great training on how to do this, on how to do subscription boxes in a, uh, in a good way. And yeah, so really it was kind of a mindset thing, a shift of like, oh, okay, I'm running the ship. I need to figure out how to print these mailing labels on this printer that I'm getting ready to throw out the window.
I was about to
Stuff like
say, my next question was, what's something that you're super proud of yourself for learning how to do recently? It was print labels.
that. Yes,
Yes.
it was. So I shipped out my first round of boxes
Ah,
last, and
yay! How exciting!
it was super exciting. It was like it took a few months to kind of set everything up, get the box designed, and get everything in place. And the last thing to do is like, I'm going to print the labels, the shipping labels, and just trot on over to the post office, and this is going to be, easy peasy. And that was kind of the thing that almost threw me over the edge. It was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna make me quit my business because I can't get these labels to print. But I figured it out. I'm a problem solver. I did, but it was like, oh, that just the unsexy stuff
Oh
of the
yeah.
business. But I managed it. My favorite thing is picking out the products and
Oh
talking
yeah.
to all the makers. And,
That's
I'm trying to
so
feature
fun.
women-owned business, businesses, widow-owned, if I can,
Oh
as
yeah,
much as I
absolutely.
can. So that's the fun part. I really love that.
We'll have a couple of questions to end with, and these are just more personal questions for you.
Mhm.
Um, what's one of your fondest memories with Dave?
Oh, there's so many. Like, I knew him for 17 years. Like, we were
Wow.
together for 17 years. So I am not a country girl. I had never fished before or really camped. And so like I remember like, hey, can you teach me how to camp? And he's like, teach you how to camp, or you just kind of camp. It's like a thing. just camp. There's no like camping 101. But so camping, like really kind of getting out of my own element and fishing and camping and just really being to 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 adopt our kids through foster care. That was a huge deal. It was a lot, and we got to really learn a lot about each other as we were
Yeah.
going through that process, and it really brought us together even more. And so I think just parenting, going, the excitement of knowing that we were going to be parents, and just that day that we became parents, and just everything after that, everything was just focused on our kids. And he's a good dad, he's a teacher, he was good at all
Yeah.
things he did. So yeah, those are kind of my fondest, just general memories.
Yeah. Very cool. And then my second question was, what's the biggest change you've seen in yourself since becoming a widow?
Mm. Trusting myself. I That's not something I did a lot of before Dave died. I kind of relied on him more than I really should have, or it just that's just how things happened. But now it's like I can stand on my own 2 feet. Look what I've done. Like I really trust the decisions that I make. I always listen to my gut. If I don't feel, if something feels off, then I trust myself to know that it's off, and I don't go that direction. So I just let my inner wisdom guide me, and it's done pretty well so far. But that's a big change. That's not how I operated before Dave died.
Yeah. And it's also great advice to give to other people too, because
Hmm.
you don't always rely on how you're feeling and your instincts, and you think that maybe they're wrong, but I always say that too. Go with your gut.
Yeah,
It's usually
go with
right.
your gut. Yeah, and the self-care is what got me to the point where I could, because I couldn't trust my gut with all the noise. Part of self-care was also noticing how I talked to myself, and it wasn't always really kind.
Yeah.
And so I just made a decision I need to notice my thoughts and just speak to myself with a little more kindness and compassion.
Yes. Well, Melissa, oh my God, you are a rock star, girl. I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day. I love
I
what you're doing.
know.
I love
Mm.
what you're creating. I love what you're putting out there. And I want to remind all of the widow creators out there, please get in touch with us if you're interested in collaborating with Melissa about products. Just Melissa, tell us where we can find you. All the places.
My website is www.filledwithgold.org. And I'm also on Facebook. I have a business page, which is Filled with Gold, and on Instagram as well. So I'd love to hear from you. I'm also offering a 10% off coupon for your listeners,
Yay.
for 10% off subscription plans, and that's Widow 180, which is which is the that's a coupon code. So
All right.
um, yeah,
Coupon code Widow 180. And that was the Instagram was also filled with gold, right?
yes,
Okay.
that's filled underscore with underscore gold.
Okay.
So,
So we can find.
which is
And if
Instagram.
anyone wants to email me, you can email me with your product information too, jen@widow180.com. So you can always go that route and we can put you in touch with Melissa. So
Yes.
thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. I love it. And thank you so much for sharing your story today and putting everything that you've been through is going to a good story now.
Thank you. And I love what you do. I'm glad that there's podcasts out there. I'm glad that you're talking about um, widows' issues, because that is not something that was available early on. And so I love what you do. Keep doing it.
Thank you. Thank
Mhm.
you so much. All right. Well, I will keep in touch with you for sure, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.